before I do go live. Is this going to be streamed to your Badger podcast?
Yes.
Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, live. All right. Welcome to our YouTube channel and to the James Butler Cricket Badger podcast. My name is Lucas R32 Sky. Here with me from the Cricket Badger podcast is James Butler. Give us a follow on Twitter and watch his broadcast. James, thank you for joining. We're here to review the World Test final between Australia and India. We're here to talk about the Ashes and the racism scandal at Yorkshire again. But first, the World Test final, James. This was very dominant by Australia. I think India were never. I just love saying that. India were probably never in control in this match. There were a couple of signs from Kohli and Rahane in the second innings, but Australia, James, to be credited, and without my bias, they were very dominant in this Test match, James.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. They played the better of the cricket, didn't they? And deserved to win it. And it's a big thing. I mean, we talked a week or so ago about whether I've got excited about the World Test Championship yet. I'm still not at fever pitch, but I did enjoy the final. So maybe a few percentage points on from when I last spoke to you. I thought it was a good final. It's always good to see two of the best teams in the world going toe-to-toe for a reason, and the World Test Championship's given them that reason. And I think Australia deserved to win it. They look a really good side, I have to be honest. Australia look a really good side.
India won the toss. The pitch started off as a green top and then got more dry as the game went on, became more spin friendly. India, they won the toss and bowled first, and I didn't mind the idea. But unfortunately, James, they were bowling too short in that second session. They got out Karaja, they got out Labuschagne, and then for some weird reason, they wanted to bowl short to David Warner when he attacked them. Steve Smith went after them. So I think it was a badly bowled Indian team in that first innings. Especially, we don't want to criticise players, but Umesh Yadav was very poor. When he came into the attack, literally got blasted out of the attack by Warner and Smith. And then not to mention Travis Head, who made that brilliant 160. Was it the right call bowling first, James?
No.
Yep.
No, it wasn't, was it, as it turned out? I mean, but having said that, you don't know what would have happened if they bowled well, because I think you're right.
Exactly,
they bowled too short. They fed Travis Head in particular. I think he was loving it, wasn't he? Going along, run a ball for his hundreds. And he's always been a good player, Travis Head, but he's really starting to grow into that Test shirt now. And, just kind of throwing forward to the Ashes, which obviously starts in a few days' time. There aren't too many weak links in that Australian batting lineup, which, David Warner's got a little bit of form behind him, as opposed to when they came last time. You've got, obviously, Steve Smith, Labuschagne, two proven middle order players, two of the best players in the world. We picked our World 11 on the Cricket Badger podcast the other day. Both of those got into it.
Yes.
I just think there's not. I mean, Travis Head joins the fun as well. I know you don't like him, but I think Cam Green is a really good prospect. He's not the finished article just yet. He's gonna. He'll have days in the sun and he'll have days where it maybe isn't quite so sunny, because that's what happens when you're a youngster coming through. You've got to take the rough with the smooth a little bit. But I think anybody can see that he's got serious potential, and he's. Australia, I think, in Test matches certainly have really missed. There's not many times in Australia's Test history where they've had a bona fide all-rounder. You look at other countries. The Bothams, the Flintoffs, the Stokes for England. You've got the Kapil Devs and Hardik Pandyas and what have you for India, Jadeja. All the other countries that have had success have had a really good all-rounder who can add that balance to the side. Australia have missed that. It's been very much, batters, keeper, and then the bowlers. I think Cam Green could make a big difference to Australia over the next decade, because he's going to provide that balance. He's the fourth seamer, bowls very good, bowls very well at times. And I think his batting is going to go from strength to strength. He's big, tall unit, and he's got good stretch and good levers, and obviously got some runs in the IPL, so he'll come in with confidence from that. So I think he's one to watch over the next few weeks.
Well, if you look at the score that Australia made, 469, hindsight, you say, no, India made a huge mistake. There's nothing like putting runs on the board. But as you said, if they would have bowled well, if they would have pitched it, I guarantee if Australia won the toss and bowled, I guarantee you they would have been laser-like pitching the ball up, something India didn't do.
It's discipline, isn't it? You know, surely you have your team meetings, you decide, you know, most of these players, all these players have played in England before. So it's not like, because I mean, there have been times where I've seen players come into county cricket who haven't had previous experience of playing in England, and they bowl the Australian length, which is a bit further back of a length than back of the length is. Too short, basically. And they're looking for the Australian bounce, and they're looking for the carry and what have you, which you don't always get in England. Only certain tracks really give you that. Maybe Old Trafford and the Oval in its in its heyday when it was really a pacey track. But generally speaking, in England, you have to pitch it up a little bit more. And you sometimes watch the first 2 or 3 matches that an Aussie has in the county championship, and they're kind of working that out. You can see the cog going. But you know that that Indian side have got have had experience in England. You know, a lot of them have played county cricket to varying degrees. They've played Test series here before. They know where you're supposed to bowl in England. There's no excuse for bowling too short and getting carried away with that. And there just wasn't the discipline, and there didn't seem to be the nous either to regroup after a while. You know, maybe you can be forgiven maybe for going 5 or 6 overs and hemorrhaging a few runs and getting the tactic wrong. But then surely your skipper has to say to the bowlers, "Come on, guys, let's pitch this up a little bit more. Let's go to Plan C or Plan A or Plan D or whatever." And because Australia was just it was meat and drink, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, if you look at the scoreline, it was really 2 guys that did the damage. You know, Australia's lower audience didn't fire their openers, except for David Warner chipped in with 45. But Alex Carey, the keeper, chipped in with 40. But it was really 2 main men that just completely destroyed him. Steve Smith 120 and Travis had 160. Apart from that, you'd say, well, it's the same old Australia. You know, they need Steve Smith to bail them out, but that wasn't the case. Travis Head stepped up. Alex Carey pitched in. So it was a really funny score, because it was really 3 men that just blew India away. And they had, I don't know what it's with Steve Smith's form coming into this Test series hasn't been great. Post 2019 Ashes, it took him 2 years to get a Test 100. I think that was against New Zealand. Didn't have a good series of Pakistan. Didn't have a good series of Sri Lanka. Didn't have a good series of India. As far as converting, when it comes to conversion, Steve Smith is the best from 50 to 100. Didn't really do that. But when it comes to England, James, I don't know if it's something in the water. It just turns into Bradman. It's impossible to get him out, and India found that.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't in county cricket. I mean, he got sawn off a couple of times for some dodgy LBW decisions.
Yes.
But he didn't necessarily score the runs I was expecting him to do for Sussex. But there is something. I mean, I think it's the same with anybody, though, isn't it? You know, you go to go to a restaurant where you've had a lovely time before. You've already got those nice vibes before you go in the front door, and therefore probably more predisposed to enjoy your meal again than if it was your first visit. And obviously, when you've as a sportsman, you go to a particular cricket ground where you've got good memories of either winning or scoring a big 100 or something like that. Those old juices will start to kind of flow through your body a bit. And I think stepping off the plane in England for Steve Smith is that, because he's got good memories of everywhere in England. So England, he remains, I think, for the English bowlers as we go through the Ashes, he remains the biggest wicket. Labuschagne's obviously quality. Travis Head can score runs. David Warner's a big wicket, but Steve Smith, the players like Jimmy Anderson, Stuart Broad, Ben Stokes, he's burnt on their retinas because he's batted so long against them. So he's the key wicket. Would
it be fair to say the one batsman that they wouldn't want to see score runs in that final was Steve Smith?
I think if England were, I think England would actually say to you, if England had a voice, obviously there'd have to be a certain player saying this, but I think they'd say to you, we don't really care about that Test match, the World Test Championship. We're just concentrating on what we do. We're going to go out there. We're going to Bazball you into submission. We're going to win the Ashes. Whatever you've done in preparation to that, good luck to you. The Ashes doesn't start until Thursday, but I think and there is a lot of sort of, I don't know, I guess sports psychology, a lot of merit in saying that, because that would give you the positive vibes. And Brendan McCullum, Ben Stokes have already said they're going to be in overdrive on Bazball when it comes to the Ashes. They're not going to take a step back. But it doesn't do you any harm, does it, for some of the key components of your opposition to be having a bit of a tough time? I mean, Stuart Broad absolutely had David Warner as his bunny, standing at the crease, just waiting to be out in the last Ashes series in England. So if you can get a few of the key components in the Australian batting order in that same kind of mode, doesn't do you any harm at all. But England will just be concentrating on their own stuff.
Yep. Going back to the World Test final, India came out, started their first innings, and basically, James, they were in all sorts of trouble. Scott Boland removed Shubman Gill. Pujara, two misjudgments by Pujara, by Shubman Gill, and they were never going to come back from there. There was late hitting by Rahane, who somewhat revived his Test match career. He was on the outer. Jadeja, a lot of debate with Jadeja if they should have gone with Ashwin, but a little partnership there. But that first innings, they were completely blown away by Scott Boland, completely blown away by Pat Cummins, and they had no answer to them, James.
Yeah, I mean, Shubman Gill's an interesting one, isn't he? I mean, we'll talk about his second innings dismissal, I'm sure, in a few minutes' time. But he's just blazed a huge set of runs in the IPL. I mean, I don't think it necessarily does India any favours, does it? I mean, India, obviously, the IPL does India loads of favours. It gets them a lot of money, makes their players rich. It excites their home publics. There's nothing wrong with the IPL from that point of view. But coming into a World Test Championship final off the back of an IPL, and it's a long competition. So you've you've had to invest yourself in it. Then all of a sudden, the next thing you're doing is jumping on a plane to England to come and play the World Test Championship final. Good time for Australia to play them. So I don't think they were particularly in Test match mood, because all they've been doing is smashing a white ball about.
Just on that, do you think they got their priorities straight? Do you think players could have skipped the IPL, or at least played half and then gone to county like Steve Smith did?
Why would you want to do that?
To get some experience on pitches, conditions.
I think genuinely, the IPL is more important to Indian cricket than winning the World Test Championship. So why would a player want to do that?
So, well, that just answers my question, and maybe their priorities did not last.
Well, in your opinion, the priorities are wrong. In their opinion, their priorities will be dead on.
Yeah.
Shubman Gill's had an incredible season in the IPL. He's going to be a very rich man off the back of that. He's going to have got countless more followers on his Instagram or whatever, and all the various things that make brands Shubman Gill the marketable force he is. He's a young, good-looking guy in India. He's going to be very, very marketable if he makes the grade in the national side and rules the roost in the IPL. So there's from his own personal perspective, giving the IPL, scoring 800 plus runs and coming and maybe having two failures in the World Test Championship is probably the right way around for him.
Do you think they got their priorities straight?
I love Test cricket.
I'll rephrase that question. So I'll rephrase that question. Do you think they took this final seriously enough?
I think once they landed in England, they'll have taken it seriously. But that's not giving yourself a huge amount of time to get ready for the change in colour of the ball. But I mean, players do it. You see it in English county cricket all the time. You flip from one day competition to a 4-day game, and players still manage to get runs. So, but yeah, I mean, I can't knock them. I really can't knock Indian players for giving the IPL. The IPL is India's flagship tournament. It's the biggest tournament in the world when it comes to cricket, and I'd include probably the World Cup in that as well. The T20 World Cup in that. So, you make that work for you, and then obviously as soon as the IPL's finished, you're probably tired. You probably want a couple of days on a beach somewhere or something, to just recharge your batteries. But then the next thing you're doing is getting on a plane to come to England to take on Australia in a one-off Test match. And I'd never think that India are very good in one-off Test matches. India, I don't think are quick starters in series, and they, I did tweet after the World Test Championship final that I'd love to see that becoming a 2 or 3 match series, because I think the quality of it was really good.
We'll get into that later. I somewhat agree. We'll get into that a little bit later, but yeah, go ahead.
I mean, just to go back to your question, though, I love Test cricket. I want to see everybody taking it seriously, but I can understand why when you're playing the IPL, you give that 100%, and that probably just burns your batteries out a little bit.
Well, this is not one time, as you mentioned, they don't do well in one-off Test. When they returned back to England, they got blown out that series by this Bazball. They've lost to Australia, but also, James, they lost to New Zealand in this World Test final.
Yeah.
So that's now 2 final, and from memory, New Zealand blew them out of the water just like Australia did.
I don't think Indian. I don't think they do well in the one-off Test matches against quality opposition. Yeah. Is
it that, or is it they're just not taking it seriously because of the IPL? Because that's now 2 finals that they've played poorly in games.
They will want to win the World Test Championship. When they walk out onto that pitch, they will want to be winning. They'll want to be getting hundreds. They'll be taking it as seriously as any match they've ever played. But it comes up. Just the fact of the calendar is, it tends to come off the back of an 8-week-long IPL where you are playing a lot of games, and there's a lot of pressure in playing the IPL. You're only thinking, well, you're bowling 4 overs, you're smashing the ball around for maybe 25 balls or something. But the pressure expectation from those fans in India, the franchise fans, and the intensity of that tournament isn't to be underestimated. So when you come out at the end of it, and especially if your team's gone all the way through to the very final stages, you're going to be very tired. You can be a young, fit man with the world at his feet, but that's going to tire anybody out.
I'll answer this one more question, and then we'll move on from this. Do you think the BCCI should have moved the IPL forward, knowing that they had a World Test Championship?
No.
Okay.
But I think what you're trying to suggest, Lucas, or the kind of inference in your question, is that the World Test Championship is more important than the IPL, and it's not.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not.
That's what's India. Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
For the BCCI and for Indian players, it's not more important.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they're taking the World Test Championship lightly. It means that they've given the IPL 180 million%. I know that's not possible. And then the World Test Championship follows, and they make the best of that.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be biased here, but Australia, they lined this up for months. As soon as they qualified,
well, good for them.
They really focused on this thing,
and it worked for them.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, could have India done the same thing? But I mean, obviously.
The bare, I mean, no matter how much you love the 100 or the Big Bash League or any of the Caribbean Premier League, so there is no competition in the same stratosphere as the IPL. And for Indian cricket, in terms of revenue, in terms of exciting their 1.4 billion home population, and then millions around the world, and all of the various trappings and razzmatazz and everything that competition brings to the BCCI. That is the most important thing on their calendar. It's just, I mean, how the rest of the world competes with that or copes with that is another podcast, or probably a series of 10 podcasts, isn't it? But it's for Indian cricketers and for the Indian management, having a kind of, if you scroll back 3 months, their priorities would be: 1, have a fantastic IPL, make lots of money, excite fans, get loads of social media hits, blah 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 blah. Oh, then there's the World Test Championship to fly to. We'll deal with that then. That's just that's the reality of how Indian cricket's been over the last 3 months. Yeah.
Okay. I'll come away from that. So I might be upsetting the boss. India, in reply, made back to the final.
I think he would find it hard to disagree with that.
No, I understand that that tournament makes more money than any cricket tournament in the world. I completely understand that, 100%. And players want to play in that, and I've got no problem with players playing in that tournament. Absolutely no problem. But I still think that Test cricket is the number one format, and when you're putting Test cricket at risk, I don't think that's a good look for the game.
It is for me and you.
Yeah.
But at the moment for India, it's
no.
I think it's a priority. Test cricket is a priority for India. It's probably not their biggest priority.
No. and that's where, you know, a double-edged sword is. In other countries, Test cricket is the number one priority, like England, Australia. And I know that
Well,
we can't all be
I beg to
Australian.
differ, Lucas, because I mean England are currently the best one-day team and the best Test team. So
Of course.
all of the formats are the priority
But
for England.
yeah, but very good. For now, there was a time where we dominated one-day cricket from 1990s
Yeah.
to the early 2000s, including the 2010 World Cup that was in Australia. I went to one of those games. I was very proud in that semi-final. But moving on from that, India made 296. Australia in the second innings, you know, Steve, they played silly shots, but they were chasing runs. India's second innings run chase looked okay, James. Looked really good. But again, couple of silly shots. Rohit Sharma sweeping Nathan Lyon. Kohli was their own worst enemy, James. They could have gave this a real good crack. Kohli and Rahane were in the crease on day 5, and then Scott Boland just killed any hopes of that. And basically, the game was over when Boland took those 2 wickets and won over. So, what do you think it was India's own demise in that second innings when they played silly shots?
It's always hard to bat last in a Test match wherever you are. I think. It's the hardest task anyway as a batter, isn't it? And as you said, they got off to. They had 3 of their premier batters got off to a good start with Rohit and Virat and Ajinkya Rahane. But chasing the total they were chasing, it's a big ask, isn't it? Kind of in records setting territory there, aren't you? Chasing 444 to win the Test match. So it was always going to be maybe an unlikely thing. There was time constraints as well, wasn't there, a little bit? So they had to push on a bit. And I think they opted to on the basis that they were very, very unlikely just to bat out time for a tie, for a draw. They opted to go down the Bazball route, if anything, of just kind of go, let's go for this and see, let's play a few one-day shots or whatever. Let's go for this and see how close we can get. And it wouldn't have taken a huge amount for it to maybe have been a slightly different chase, would it? Because you take away a couple of those dismissals, and then then you've got maybe a little bit of a start, and you start to believe in the dressing room, and all of a sudden it's potentially game on. But you never thought they were going to get there.
Just on run chases, what we've seen England do we sometimes get carried away? Like that was a big score to chase down, but we haven't seen England do that kind of extent. But we've seen England chase high scores very easily. Do we get carried away with that, saying, "Oh, well, England have done it. How come this team can't do it?"
Well, I think it's changing, isn't it? There are more successful chases. You tend to find that in a lot of sides as well. Teams bat a little bit deeper than they used to. Your number 9, 10 certainly can hold a bat and hang around if they've got a senior partner. We saw, I don't want to remind you of it, but Headingley, Jack Leach, and Ben Stokes, and how Jack Leach stuck around for Ben Stokes, and they got across the line. It would have been probably unheard of if you go back to the sort of 70s and stuff, to have a number 11 or whatever coming in and being able to do that. Really, there weren't many last wicket stands that really amounted to too much. So I think the landscape has changed. White ball cricket has changed. Players play a lot more white ball cricket. Players have got used to, in ODIs, chasing down 400 or something like that, or 350 to win matches without really having to break sweat. So they suddenly have started to transfer that mindset into Test cricket. And obviously Test cricket is different because the bowlers can bowl longer spells. They can come back and bowl more later on. The balls you get a new ball after 80 overs. The field placings can be a lot more flexible than in a one-day game. But even so, we've seen plenty of chases where they've taken that white ball mindset into a 4th innings run chase, and it's come off. But I mean, we kind of remember the successful ones, but there are plenty along the lines of the India chase where they will have probably had that that have had a team talk very much along the lines that I've just spoken about, that this is
yeah,
possible. Let's go out there and be positive,
yeah,
blah, 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 blah.
yeah.
And many times it doesn't come off either.
Yeah. Well, England did that against India a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
With Johnny Bairstow. They also did it in South Africa. So they in a way, as what you said, they are changing the mindset of run chasers, that nothing's impossible.
Yeah.
And
I think
India,
the average run chase or whatever, I'm sure I haven't got the stats, but I'm sure it's getting higher.
Oh,
and the average amount of belief. If you, I mean, you'd never be able to measure this, but if you could measure a 1970s dressing room chasing 270 and a 2023 dressing room chasing 350, they're probably the 2023 dressing room would be more optimistic. So just the sport changes, the world changes, and cricket's changing, isn't it?
Indeed, it is. And credit to India, they did give it a red hot crack. They didn't shut up shop, which I thought they might do. Because if they drew, they still get the ICC trophy along with Australia. Yeah. So technically, they'd still be World Cup final winners, technically. And they got bowled out for 234. So, incidentally, James, you may not be aware of this. That's the same scoreline that India got bowled out in the 2003 World Cup against Australia.
Okay.
So there's a little stat-nation for you there, in case no one knew about that. Ricky Ponting that day had made 100 that game, so I remember that very well because I watched it in my living room. So Australia won by 209 runs. Can
I ask you a question?
Yes, James.
The catch that Cam Green took off Shubman Gill, did you think that was out or not?
No,
you didn't.
I didn't think it was out. I think I don't know if you heard it, but Ricky Ponting made a very good analysis of it. He said that if you catch the ball and you hold it like that, and half the ball goes on the ground, that's okay. Yeah. That's not out. But if you catch it like that and drop it like what's in your hand, it's not out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there was confusion of when Cameron Green held it like that or like that. I think that's where the confusion started. So if it was like that, not out. If it's like that, out.
Yeah.
So from what I saw, I thought it was more like that. It was more hitting the ground as he caught it. But the problem is, James, was there enough evidence to overturn it? I don't think there was. No. I think you could have looked at it from the dawn of time.
Yeah. I just go back to I think I've mentioned this to you before, but when they did, I think it was Tony Gregg and I think Martin Nicholas tried to replicate it a few years later when they went out into the middle, got the cameraman on the kind of on the straight boundary to film them and said, right, do you think this is out or not? And they kind of just leant down with the cricket ball, either in their hand with their fingers under it or just in front of their hands with their fingers not under it. And nobody in the studio could tell the difference between either because there's kind of the distance and everything like that. So and quite a few people thought that the one where Tony Gregg got his hand right underneath the ball and it was out, it would have been out, was actually on the turf. So it's very, I think it's a very hard thing for a fourth umpire to actually make that adjudication on those catches where you can't quite tell. It's just nigh on impossible. And from Cam Green's point of view, it would have felt like he caught that cleanly. If it would have felt like it had gone straight into his hands. Where I mean, kind of that aside, where I have an issue really is Shubman Gill's behaviour off the back of that. In that he
posting on social media,
yeah. I mean, I just don't think that's right. I mean, he's basically been fined 15% of his match fee for criticising the TV umpire's decision, and he's meanwhile. India, meanwhile, have been fined their entire match fee for maintaining a slow over rate, and we can talk about that a little bit if you want as well. But
we will.
I think, no matter what you feel inside, I mean, we've all played cricket at various levels. Yeah. No matter when you get out, you're disappointed. Full stop.
Yeah.
When you know you're out and it's a good ball, then you're obviously disappointed, but you think, well, he's done me there. When you kind of get out and you either haven't edged it or you think there's something wrong with the decision, it's going down leg in your LBW or something.
Yeah.
Then you walk off chuntering under your breath or something and you're not happy. But you don't swing around to the umpire and say, and kind of call the umpire out, either on the pitch or in this modern day of social media, off the pitch. And effectively, what Shubman Gill did was he picked up his phone and basically ranted about it on his tweet, which is to me no different than standing on the edge of the boundary and shouting at the guy. It's a very public forum. He knows that's going to be seen, and I think no matter if everybody makes mistakes, umpires are humans. It's part and parcel of the game. Obviously, DRS has minimised mistakes to some degree, but there's always going to be mistakes. Shubman Gill, he'll have made loads of mistakes in his batting career. He's been out plenty of times. He'll have days where he gets everything right. Umpires are no different. Whether you think it was a catch or not, there's just no excuse for doing what Shubman Gill did.
Yeah, and the word I was looking for was analysis, not analyst. Sorry about that.
You knew what you meant.
So sorry about that. No, but if we look at the bigger picture with the phone thing, I know players. They type on Twitter, "Oh, this was a good day 1. This was a good day 2. On to day 3 or whatever." Yeah. Do you think they should stay off their phone until the end of the Test match?
I do actually. I do.
Yeah.
I think it'd be wise to. If I was the media manager of a team, I'd probably advise them to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, there are obviously, if you've just got 180 or something at Lords and you want to take a picture of it and tweet it for the honours board or something, I think you can make exceptions to stuff. But I think anything where you're actually entering into a dialogue about a controversial situation or into a dialogue with supporters, then you're asking for trouble. It's a bit like going out and getting drunk and picking up your phone at 3 a.m, isn't it? You don't want to be doing that. So I don't think you want to be doing when you're kind of fresh from adrenaline of something either going right or wrong on the pitch. Probably the worst time to be picking up your phone and tweeting away. So I mean, it's funny because when I was the media manager at Yorkshire, I won't mention the player, but he'd had a bad day. And then the local newspaper had picked up on a tweet that he'd written that evening, which was along the lines of, "Oh, bad day today, let's go again tomorrow," because they were playing again the following day. And they'd used that as a quote from him in the piece that they'd written.
Yeah.
And he came in and said, "They can't do that, can they? That's off my Twitter." And I said, "Mate, they can. Your Twitter is probably seen by more people and heard by more people than an interview you do with the local radio station. It's a quote. So you've got to be careful what you put out there."
Yeah. Well, in some sports, they have a really strict no policy while you're tweeting on the phone during the game.
Yeah.
So maybe they should employ. Maybe we're going mad. We're just going bonkers with this, but everyone has an opinion on that. So in regarding Cam Green, I've got no problem that it was out. No problem whatsoever. There wasn't any evidence to overturn it. There are some, Cameron Green. In fairness to Cameron Green, I will defend him here. That's all. That's all the shocks going around. Although I'm defending Cam Green. I don't get him getting abused on social media, saying cheat and all that. He wouldn't have known.
No,
he wouldn't have known.
I mean, if you play cricket and you're taking a catch on the half volley, I mean, you've kept wickets. You're probably taking more of them than anybody. But
exactly,
But it feels like it's gone in cleanly. I've done it,
I've done it too.
And you don't quite know, which is why you kind of claim the catch, but then you're kind of waiting for somebody else to make the decision. And you probably in that situation would take it either way, wouldn't you? You'd be happy if it's given out, but if they overruled it and you weren't quite sure, but you felt it had gone in, but you realised what the circumstances are, you'd probably wrinkle your nose. But if they turned it down, you'd probably not create too much. You certainly wouldn't create as much as Shubman Gill did.
No, exactly that. And we don't condone abuse of players. Well, I certainly don't.
On a serious note, in English kind of domestic cricket, club cricket, I don't know what it's like in Australia, but I know in certain areas of the country last season there were umpires getting abused on the pitch. I don't know. I think umpires get paid, but it's not a lot. Probably just about enough to cover their expenses and buy them a couple of beers afterwards.
Same.
But so effectively they're giving up their time because they like to do it.
Yeah.
And if you kind of getting abuse on the pitch and people are making, we're going to lose umpires out of grassroots cricket, which is not a good thing. Who wants to go and get abused for all of Sunday afternoon or whatever? So and players at the top levels set an example. People see what they do. I mean, the amount of times you see Ronaldo diving or something, you go down the local park and there's a player doing exactly the same because they've seen Ronaldo. It's cool. It's good to do it. And I'm not saying you kind of consciously go out there and do stuff to damage. Some people do go out there and do stuff to damage umpires, but it's not a good look, and it's not a good thing for cricket to get used to, and it's not a good thing to be rubbed off on lower levels of cricket, because that compromises umpires. At the very limit of it, it compromises their safety, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't. And to answer your question, it does happen in Australia. Couple of, especially with alcohol, they get a bad decision and they think it's okay to criticize the umpire for that, and literally they don't use nice words. Nothing I will repeat on here. So it does happen in Australia as well. So the English umpires aren't the only ones, and I'm sure it happens everywhere else around the world. Not just in cricket, James, but everywhere. Rugby, soccer, AFL, whatnot, even tennis.
Yeah. So it's a difficult job, standing on your feet all day, doing whatever and making the decisions. You're going to get some wrong. And if you get abused for every time you get something wrong, you're probably not going to umpire very long. And, as well as having 11 players on each side, you need 2 guys out there doing that job as well. You need a scorer. You need, all of these people make cricket, the cogs of cricket go round, don't they?
Exactly. I can't. Maybe I can't remember the cricket, but one cricketer said that it's maybe we shouldn't have umpires at all and just go with DRS.
I think I've said that.
I don't know who said that. Maybe you can clarify.
It might have been
I'm not
me.
sure who said that.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Was it you?
I think it might have been me. I think that all you need is one bloke out there to count to 6, hold the jumpers, listen out for any sledging and kind of be the referee of that kind of on-field situation. But in terms of making decisions, why don't we just get all the decisions right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know. I get frustrated by the umpire's call on DRS, and I know whenever I tweet,
I hate that. That's one of the worst things in cricket. My God, can we get rid of that,
Lucas? Whenever I tweet it, I get loads of people saying you need to have the human element. But if the human element's wrong, why do you need it? And I think there should be a little bit more scope, because if you start to bring DRS in and make every decision on LBW purely on the way DRS works, you're going to have teams out for 32 on a regular basis, because everything will be LBW. But so I think there needs to be a little bit of scope there, to maybe just widen the stumps a little bit in terms of the way how DRS and Hawkeye and stuff look at it. But I mean, it's an arduous day. It's a long day. DRS makes the right decision. Do we actually need the humans to be out there making a decision a computer can do? I mean, I know if we go down that route, there's a lot of talk about AI at the moment and all of the dangers of that in the future. And maybe that's me just forwarding the end of the world. But there you
go. Ever seen the movie I, Robot, incidentally?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. You know what I'm talking about. Good movie. If you're out there and need a good movie, you should watch that. Will Smith is brilliant in that movie. But no. Moving on from that, we will talk about the Ashes. Actually, before the Ashes, the Yorkshire racism scandal. I know you're very passionate on this, James. The ECB came out and basically commended who was it? Colin Graves.
They criticised Colin Graves.
A statement he made on the Yorkshire racism thing, saying it was just banter. I know you're very passionate.
I think there were two things that have came from what Colin said. I mean, I've kind of tweeted about this earlier on today, so it's not new news, but it's I think to say that there wasn't institutional racism at Yorkshire is Colin and possibly a lot of other people not quite understanding what institutional racism means. Institutional
Yeah.
racism doesn't mean that everybody's walking around with KKK hats on and burning crosses and calling everybody the P and N word continuously. Institutional racism is very, I think, prevalent in English society and beyond, because it's any old organisations that weren't initially set up to cater for a multicultural, probably females as well, different sexualities, whatever, isn't geared to having people in those categories necessarily having a voice and able to complain or lodge grievances with any degree of certainty, or indeed organisation really listening to it. So that's institutional racism. And for me, the club was institutionally racist. Azim and Adil both made complaints about racism at the club. Whether or not you believe those complaints or not is completely irrelevant. The club should take notes, deal with it seriously, investigate it properly, and take action as appropriate. And they did none of that. And then released Azim 2 or 3 weeks later. So it just, for me, I could not be surer that the Yorkshire County Cricket Club was institutionally racist. The other thing, which I thought we'd got past, when Colin talked about, he was asked about whether he witnessed anything that was racist when he was at the club, and he said no. And then he continued to say that anything along those lines was just banter.
Yeah.
And it's such a, I mean, I know we've all played sports, and you give your teammates a ribbing and you have a bit of a laugh along the way. It's supposed to be fun at the end of the day. But as soon as that starts to become overly personal or indeed racist, then you've gone too far with it. And it's ceased to be banter and jokes and japes and jolly ha ha ha, to being insulting and potentially harmful to whoever you're directing that at. And I just think to kind of talk about racism and banter in the same sentence is so archaic these days. I mean, we went through all of this sort of 12 or 18 months ago, and I thought we'd all agreed that racism and banter are not the same thing. It may be that somebody's saying something they intend as being banter, and they get that banter wrong, or they're not clever enough to actually realise what they're saying, or they're thinking they're overly funny and they're overstepping the mark. But they should then be receptive for somebody to turn around and say, "Mate, that's out of order. You shouldn't say that," and to then apologise and to backtrack. But to kind of just say that anything that was remotely racist at Yorkshire County Cricket Club, and there's been a lot of stuff catalogued, was just banter, is just excuse my French, bollocks.
Yeah, exactly. 100% agree. Well, now not that this was racist, but I forgot the person who said this. When Australia won there, you tweeted this, so you can probably tell me who this was, or bring more information into this. After Australia won their World Test Championship, they didn't share alcohol. They didn't put alcohol because of Usman Khawaja and his Muslim heritage. Now, one person attacked. I'm not saying that was racist or anything, but one person said, "Is that really fair? Because he's Muslim, should you share alcohol, or should you tell him to, in this case, Usman Khawaja, to go away?"
Nigel Farage, English.
What's your take on that?
English listeners and viewers will be very aware of who Nigel Farage is. He's more on the far right of English politics.
It came from nowhere, James. This came from absolute nowhere. I didn't even know who he was.
He waits for stuff like that. He's basically, I think, quite a sad individual who's got completely the wrong political ideologies, who is just trying to actually stay relevant. And he's picked on. Once again, the Australian cricket team did not celebrate in champagne style because one of the team members is a Muslim. Are we all to suspend normal life because of the minority? To which I retweeted it saying, if it's your thing, drink it, don't waste it. I mean, I always think it's a crying shame. You get a load of big bottles of champagne, you spray it all over the grass rather than actually have a sip of it in a slightly more sedate way. So if it's your thing and you drink alcohol and that's fine. I've got no issue with that. Then drink it and do it in the privacy of a bar somewhere, or in the privacy of your dressing room, or whatever. But when you've got players of different faiths which
Yeah.
is going to be. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
This isn't going to get any less common. The world's a
No.
small place these days. People move
Yeah.
around. Uzi Khawaja is Muslim. We've got Adil Rashid and Moeen Ali in the England white ball team. When they've had celebrations, they've stepped aside. And I've
Yeah.
always thought, I don't know why they have to step aside. Why do
Yeah.
this is a team sport, and
Yeah.
you should celebrate as a team. Certainly for the public photographs, celebrate as a team. We don't want photographs of a celebration where some of the team's missing because they've had to scoot off somewhere else. And it's for me. I mean, my reply was, why should players have to excuse themselves from team celebrations when they shouldn't have to? Traditions change. Well played, Australia. And I think it's a very forward-thinking way of being. And it might just be one player, but Uzi Khawaja's got as much right to having a happy existence in that Australian dressing room as any of the others.
No, exactly. Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And and Usman Khawaja is a very laid-back individual. Very tame. Doesn't really speak much to media. I know he does his own YouTube channel and all that, but he comes off as a very nice guy, very tame, very relaxed.
Yeah.
And why should he have to move aside?
Yeah.
No, just because the team wants to spray bloody alcohol or confetti
you got
and whatnot.
You got three choices, Lucas. Yeah, you either keep the Muslim in the team photograph and pour alcohol over him when he doesn't want that to happen, or you get them to move aside so the guys that are drinking alcohol are pictured without these people, and you're able to then have champagne when the Muslim guys have moved to one side, which I think that's wrong. I mean, England do that, and England take a lot of plaudits for doing that, but it's still othering Adil Rashid and Moeen Ali. You're still making them different to the rest of them. You're one unit at the end of the day as a team. Or the final thing is to just not do it at all. Just celebrate without having champagne there. Why do you need champagne these days? I mean, it's not like you can't walk. If you're somebody that wants to have a drink, I'm sure there's beers waiting in the dressing room. I'm sure there's champagne waiting in the dressing room. And Middlesex went through a thing. I saw Steve Eskenazi did a piece on their site, I think about a year ago, where they'd had a chat with one of their Muslim players and sat them down and said, how should we play this? And I think, and somebody asked me, as if all of a sudden, because I've been kind of like quite vocal on this, that I'm certainly an expert. I'm not. I'm learning like everybody else. It's a changing world, and I don't know the ins and outs of racism 100%, but I'm certainly a lot further forward than I was 2.5 years ago. But somebody messaged me and said, our club's got 4 Muslim players. When they finish playing, the Muslim players kind of go home because they don't want to go down to the bar with the other guys. And the clubhouse is part of the setup of the club. Beer takings or whatever in the or wine takings or Coke takings are important to the running of the club in terms of finances. How do we get these 4 guys more involved with what we're doing at this club? And I said, for what it's worth, whether this is right or wrong, and I don't know, but if it was me as captain of that club or as social secretary of that club or whoever, I'd just get those 4 guys and sit them down and say, right, lads, we've noticed you've been going home. We don't want you to go home because you're a very key part of this team. We love having you here. You're just as important as Fred over there and Bill over there. How can we include you? Let's work together. Let's see how we can include you. What do you like doing? Can we go for can we go out and have a themed night that's your night where we don't drink one night and go out with you guys or whatever, and just include people. For me, that's what it's all about. Equality, inclusivity and stuff. It's including people, not just kind of having 4 guys that stood over there and getting to their cars going home because they don't want to have a beer. Actually have them as part of the discussion, so they're included and having a voice in the club as well.
And that's the key word, inclusion. Whether you're black, white, whether you're Muslim, Hindu, whatnot, you don't want to be left out. You want to be involved with the team.
It might be. It might be. You find those 4 guys go really not bothered. I need to get home. I've got other things to do. And then you maybe feel a bit better about it, or you say, well, maybe we can do it once a month or something. Stay once a month and be part of it. But it might be that they really do welcome the thought that you actually thought about them.
Yeah, and it's in Courage's case, it wouldn't. Like I said, he's laid back, but I don't know his personality in and out. I don't know the guy personally, but he may want to be included into these little things after the game. He doesn't want to probably go home to his car and feel completely left out. That would be a horrible feeling.
People say to me, Lucas, that Moeen Ali says it's fine to step aside at England's presentations.
Yeah,
and Moeen Ali maybe thinks it's fine. If that's good for Moeen Ali, that's his personal view.
Yeah.
But as an England team, I would be saying it's actually not fine, Moeen.
No,
we want you to be part of our team photograph.
Yeah,
we don't need to have champagne here. None of the other lads mind if we actually bin the champagne off.
Yeah.
Let's get you and Adil front and center. Let's get you in every photograph we do.
Yeah.
I don't
exactly.
The fact that Moeen doesn't mind doing it is irrelevant. He's just one man in the history of English cricket. He's obviously coming back for the Ashes, but and good luck to him.
Yeah.
But just because Moeen doesn't mind it, I think you're setting a precedent on the thoughts of one player there. Set a precedent on all of the Muslims that are going to follow him.
Yeah,
and look after all of them. Yeah.
And you couldn't have said it better. Indeed. You mentioned the word Ashes. We will focus on the Ashes now. First test is at Edgbaston. Is it Birmingham? Is that where it is? Edgbaston is.
Can you not Birmingham?
Birmingham. Sorry.
Yeah.
The Australian English slang.
Do you need these? Do you need these?
Yeah. I might need to be more English, James.
Yeah.
Like that will happen.
There's always hope for you.
Yeah. I wouldn't bet on that. So to the Ashes in Edgbaston, very short turnaround, James. Now England have had a week's break.
Yeah.
This is like a back-to-back test for Australia.
Yeah.
As we know, Ashes go for five series. And personally, I think Cummins won't play all if you want to include this test, 6 tests in a row. I don't think Stark will play 6 tests in a row. I don't think Boland will. I think the only bowler that probably will is Lyon.
Yeah.
But England have that advantage. They have that week's break. Now, they've brought in Moeen Ali, which has, again, caused huge debate on the social medias. Where do you start with that? Is that a good inclusion, or would you have
start with the easy one? Start with the easy question.
Yeah.
I love Moeen Ali.
Yeah.
I just don't think Moeen Ali loves Test cricket. There's a reason why he retired.
Yeah.
Maybe his juices have been flowed a little bit by the fact that Bazball's been quite exciting, and there seems to be a really exciting vibe around England's team at the moment. But when was the last time he bowled a red ball? When was the last time he took a load of wickets in cricket? When was the last time he bowled well? We're talking quite a long time ago now. And obviously he can come out and he can flash that blade and he can hit it very sweetly, Moeen can. But I just think, I know why they've done it. If you think about the positives, he's got plenty of experience. He's not a bad off spinner, and he can provide lower order an injection with. He can continue the aggression further down the order because he can score quickly. But if we look at the negatives, you're taking somebody out of retirement who's really got his calendar sorted out for doing the white ball franchise stuff, and seemed quite content doing that until they phoned him up. And it doesn't send out. There's two sides to this next statement. It doesn't send out a great statement to all of the other English spinners out there who are.
No, it doesn't. I'm going to mention that. Yeah.
Yeah, who are toiling away in county cricket and red ball cricket, doing the hard yards. All the overs in the dirt and stuff like that to try and get the selectors to notice them. Having said that, the flip side of that last statement is there aren't that many of them who are really going, selectors notice me, which is why they've gone back to Moeen, because there's no obvious replacement. I don't think Jack Leach is the greatest test bowler of all time, but he's made himself into a decent test bowler. I think he's above average, and this sounds like I'm knocking him, and I'm not. Certainly not. He's made the most of what he's got, and he's taken wickets. and he's got quite a lot of experience himself now, and he's become England's #1 bowler, and I've got no issue with that at all. Some days he makes me scratch my head a little bit. Other days I'm really impressed with him. We had a chat last time about whether Australia would have gone after him, and I'm sure they would. It would, and we'll never know whether we were right or wrong about whether we'd be able to stand up to that or not. But they'll go after Moeen. They will go after Moeen.
Yeah, they will.
And it remains to be seen, because he's got nothing behind him in terms of form at all when it comes to red ball cricket, and in terms of bowling long spells, and in terms of being out there all day. And so it's going to be a big test for him. I mean, he's had tests before and he's come through them, but it's going to be a big ask. And there's no more pressurized test match situations in the Ashes.
No, none at all. No, I listened to your podcast, and you mentioned the quote that I said to you about Ben Stokes. Sorry, Ian Bell wasn't. Ian Bell was Jonathan Trott and Alistair Cook, where he wouldn't take those players. He'd keep Zach Crawley and players like that. And I'm not knocking your two mates on that show, and they kind of agreed with Ben Stokes. I think they both said because of philosophy and all that, that's their plan A. If I'm a county batsman, if I'm averaging, let's say, 45, but my strike rate is 60 or 50.
You have to say batter these days, Lucas.
Yeah, batter. And Ben Stokes said that, I think I got better chance of playing for Man City, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like that cannot be right, surely.
I mean, I think to be honest, I think you're both right. In terms of the guys last night, and I can see the argument that Ben Stokes, Brendan McCullum have got this philosophy. This is how we play. This is what we want our players to do, and therefore we want players that can take the attack back to the opposition.
Yeah.
And Alistair Cook, a Jonathan Trott. There was one other as well. Who was the other one? And Mike Atherton. Wouldn't fit that. Wouldn't fit the mould, and therefore probably wouldn't be called up in this current regime. I guess, I mean, if you're going to live by the sword, you die by the sword. If that's going to be your philosophy, if that's going to be what Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum at the moment are providing massive entertainment for the English public. They are winning test matches, and they are winning them in style. They are playing a brand of cricket in a test match arena that nobody else has ever played.
Yeah,
that's all undeniable.
Yeah,
and
agreed.
The Aussies are going to be a big test for whether that's going to work against a high quality bowling attack. But at the moment, it's successful, and on that basis, you can't knock them, because they are picking the team to fulfill that. Fulfill what's asked of them and play attacking cricket. On the flip side, I agree with you as well. I agree with both. I think you can agree with both sides of this. I find it baffling that three of the best batters that England have had in recent times, Mike Atherton was a very, very solid opening batter at a time where England were not having a huge amount of success. The Jonathan Trott was a very stoic, who played brilliantly.
Crucial part. He was a crucial part of the 2012 win in Australia.
Absolutely, they wouldn't have won that Ashes without him.
Yeah,
and equally, Alistair Cook scored more runs in Test cricket than any other English player. There's no routine.
And still doing that, James. I noticed that 100 yesterday he scored. Yeah,
you wonder if he'd. I'll show you, Stokesy. But and you could be right on all of these. I mean, if England have had this same revolution at the start of Alistair Cook, Jonathan Trott's career, they would have probably won a load of test matches playing this way. And we would never have seen Alistair Cook and Jonathan Trott playing test cricket for England. So we would never have noticed that we missed them, would we?
No. That's
because we'd be celebrating somebody else but playing really well.
That'd be actually interesting. Let's say if Alistair Cook said that I've scored 100, I feel great. I'm ready to play. I'm ready to come out of retirement. That would be absolute mind. that'd be as big of a shock as Alistair Cook saying, "I want to play cricket again."
I asked Phil on the podcast, who's an Essex supporter. Obviously, Alistair Cook is Essex is his county.
Yeah.
I said, would you take Zach Crawley into Essex if as a replacement for Alistair Cook? And he just laughed and said, no chance. Alistair Cook's, Zach Crawley at the moment is not fit to lace Alistair Cook's boots when it comes to, and he would say that, I'm sure if Zach Crawley was sat next to me now, as well as strangling me for some of the other stuff I've said in the past, he would also agree with me that he's not in the same league in terms of his test record as Alistair Cook. So to actually have a situation where an England captain and an England coach would be picking Zach Crawley over Alistair Cook baffles me.
Yeah. Well, if you're listening, Alistair Cook, stay retired because you're not going to get picked.
Or come back and score loads of runs against these a lot.
Yeah. You won't get picked, trust me. Now to another one.
I don't think Cookie wants to get picked. I think he's quite happy doing what he's doing these days.
Yeah, well, scoring runs. Well, incidentally, he'd be probably still the best opener in England's cricket right now. Incidentally,
I mean, going back, I mean, just to kind of go elsewhere from Alistair Cook for a second, Sam Hain at Warwickshire is scoring runs left, right, and centre.
Yeah.
He scored. Did he get 100 yesterday? I think
against Notts, against Nottingham. Yeah, I think he did. Yeah.
And that's not his first of the season. He's a very, very fine player, Sam Hain, and has been for some time. But he doesn't score fast enough to come into this this England Test team. There's a few out there that are scoring quite a lot of county runs.
Yeah.
But certainly, if you listen to what Ben said in that, Ben Stokes said in that that interview with Nasser Hussain, then none of them have got a chance to play. But might as well just say, well, we're county cricketers forever.
And when he said that, he wasn't joking. He meant that. He really believes in what.
But ultimately, just a kind of one final point: there is a danger with Bazball that we're all getting too excited.
Yeah,
I mean, it's been going on for a year, and it's been a spectacular year. Stokes' record as captain has been superb. His captaincy of the team has really surprised me. I think he's been A1 brilliant. I was a little bit unsure about how he would do it, and he has been absolutely brilliant as captain. I can't fault him.
I can't either. Yeah.
So and Brendan McCullum's come in, and I could say the same about him. So at the moment, the report cards at parents' evening is, hi, mum and dad. Both Brendan and Ben are doing absolutely brilliantly. They're heading to Oxford, Cambridge. They're going to have a stellar careers, 100% all the way through their exams. But if as well as I do, the Ashes is the most important.
Yeah.
I wish it wasn't. Part of me really wishes it wasn't. Don't get me wrong. I love the Ashes. It's going to be brilliant. The next few weeks is going to be absolutely superb.
Yeah.
But England against India is great. England against New Zealand is great. I think we put too much, it's like some people only support cricket during the Ashes and only support England during the Ashes. And I wish people would just love Test cricket in general. But the Ashes, but the point is that there's a huge amount of stock in how well you do in an Ashes series. Harry Brook, who's had a stellar start to his England career, if he fails over the next 6 weeks, it's like 20 steps back for him in terms of his reputation. If he succeeds over the next 6 weeks, he's going to be the best thing in the world. His reputation is going to be bonkers. And that's the same for all of the players. You have a good Ashes, you can be forgiven all sorts of stuff in the past. You can be forgiven all sorts of stuff in the future. You're going to be an Ashes hero. And that matters. There seems to be far more brownie points in that than anything else. But the flip side is, if Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum's Bazball doesn't work over the next 6 weeks, if Australia are suddenly 2-0 up after 2 Test matches, and England have been bowled out for 75 on 2 successive day one mornings, because they've basically tried to take the attack to a very, very good bowling attack in Pat Cummins and Boland, Stark, whoever, then the way supporters are fickle. Supporters that can change their mind. There'll be a lot of people saying, I've told you all the way through Bazball's a mistake. I've told you, you'll probably find them front row of the Oval last summer, bouncing around with the Bazball t-shirt on, but they will be straight on social media saying, "Told you, been telling you for months it's a mistake. It's never going to work against the quality opposition," because it's not only Australia, it's then India away for England. So two of the toughest series they're going to have. So Bazball, if Bazball comes through if Bazball comes through 5 test matches against Australia and then comes through 4 test matches in India and is unscathed, then wow, we have got an exciting future for English Test cricket. I think there is just as much chance that it could go flat on its face a few times. People will start to doubt it, and then all of a sudden, the likes of Sam Hain and the likes of, not necessarily Alistair Cook anymore, but his equivalent of, say, Compton at Kent, might suddenly become a little bit more pickable because they might provide a little bit more solidity in the top of the order, etc. So it's in terms of how this series is set up, there are so many questions. There are so many things we're not quite sure on. It's 2 very, very good sides coming up against each other. Australia off the back of winning the World Test Championship, England off the back of a stellar 12 months where Bazball has just delighted everybody, English anyway. And it's all of those little personal battles inside that. Some people making their early forays into Ashes cricket. Some people are seasoned pros like Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson and David Warner and Steve Smith. So it's good. There are so many little battles. David Warner to be reunited with Stuart Broad, and how that's going to happen. 2019 wasn't the best for David Warner.
No.
He could use the next 6 weeks to get his revenge in style. So there are so many questions, but the biggest one, the biggest question of the lot to be answered over the next 6 weeks, possibly even the next 2 or 3 weeks, is can England play Bazball against Australia? They've played it against everybody else they've played, and it has worked. Australia have got a very, very, very fine pace attack, and we've talked about the pressure of the Ashes. The England are set up to be on the front foot, to take the aggressive route, to try and dominate, to try and take the game away from their opponents. It's, with all due respect, against some of the smaller Test nations England have played Bazball against, even against Pakistan away. It's not as hard to do it there when you've got full belief in what you're doing, it's working, and you've got Brendan McCullum saying there's no hassles here if you fail. That frees people up to have a very clear head and to go out there and play very well. In a pressure cooker Ashes series, if there is, it's what's going to interest me most. As an Englishman, I don't want this to happen, but as a cricket nutcase who just loves the psychological as well as the physical manifestation of our great sport, if England have a dodgy time, I'm going to be fascinated to see how they respond. What does Ben Stokes take a step back? Do any of that England 11 start to maybe just doubt themselves a little bit? Does Brendan McCullum just say, keep the foot to the floor, boys, I believe in you? How do they come through that? If it fails again, do they then ask the question again, or do they carrying on playing Bazball? It's going to be fascinating. How do Australia cope with Bazball? Do they play solid enough cricket where England might take a day and a half to score 700? Australia might take 3 days to score 700, but either could win you a Test match. So do Australia just play the Australian way, or do they try and go up a gear to match Bazball a little bit? Because I reckon that could be Australia's biggest mistake. If they play and become more aggressive, that might be their biggest mistake.
Well, Australia's way is to play aggressive no matter what's happening on the other side of the field. But that's their nature.
No, there's aggressive and there's Bazball.
Oh, of course, obviously, But I've mentioned this on other podcasts now. A good point you mentioned up. If it goes wrong at the start, what will happen? Now, Mitchell Stark made a quote saying, "If they're down 5 for 50, are they going to come out swinging?" He said, "No,
they absolutely will."
Yeah. The
danger with a comment like that is, Bazball isn't just about swinging. Bazball is about playing defensive shots with a positive manner. Bazball's it might be that when you've got a fork in the road in a cricket match, and there's many, aren't there, where you have to make a choice about how you're going to play the next over, how you're going to play that spinner, what are you going to do in this situation? We're 50 for 5. How do we play this, Lucas? What are we going to do? Basically, Bazball, when you've got the two choices, is taking the more positive of the two choices.
Yeah, of course.
That doesn't mean you're going to hit every ball for 6 and try and swing at everything Josh Hazelwood sends down at you. It just means you're going to look to try and score.
Yeah.
You're going to look to be a little bit more aggressive than just to try and block it for half an hour, which would have been some teams' tactics in the past and England's team's tactics in the past. It kind of, we'll be happy with 3 runs in the next 30 minutes as long as we survive. Well, this team will hit boundaries. This team will, run the quick singles. They'll come back for 2s and stuff. So it's not just about having a swipe.
No, and I've mentioned this on other podcasts with you that this is the first team also that they'll come against that plays naturally aggressive. They played Pakistan, naturally a mentally weakened team. That's no disrespect to their players, but that's the way their team is. South Africa
doesn't sound disrespectful at all, that, Lucas.
Yeah. South Africa defensive team, India defensive team. There was cracks in New Zealand, James, where they did get exposed. Now, I've said this also in the podcast. Unfortunately, that never went to air because we had technical issues. But I said the first test they made, that wasn't a traditional New Zealand pitch. Yes, there was grass, but it wasn't a complete, at times you say, oh, where the hell's the pitch? It wasn't that pitch. So mentally, it can get in your heads. Now, New Zealand corrected that. They thought, well, let's go back to what we know. And we also remember that was an absolute all-time classic test match. Yeah. So it can get into the heads of teams. But Australia play natural attacking cricket. They don't play baseball, but they're naturally aggressive scorers. David Warner's an aggressive, Travis Head. They have got their play. Alex Carey. They have got players that can take the game away from you as quick as England can.
But what I would do if I was the Australian management, I would say don't let Bazball, as batters in our side, don't watch them bat. Don't look at how they're doing it. I mean, look at how they struggle, how they're scoring runs on this pitch, because you can learn from the pitch. But if they're scoring at 7 and over, don't go out there and try and score at 7 and over. If your natural scoring rate is 3.5 and over, score at 3.5 and over. Score at 3 and over. Do whatever makes you makes the test innings for you. Because England are apparently ordering dry, hard. I mean, it's not going to be difficult. It's absolutely glorious in England at the moment. It's about 26, 27 where I am, blue sky, baking these pitches. Absolutely glorious. So it's these pitches are going to be hard. These pitches are going to be fast. These pitches are going to be good batting tracks potentially.
The pitch we saw in the World Test Championship, that's not going to be the pitch in the first test. I can guarantee that they're not going to leave grass on a pitch like that, like they didn't. There's no way, because if they lose the toss, and Australia have got dead accurate bowlers like Boland, Cummins, they're not going to do what India did, James. They're going to have an absolute field day, and they're not going to baseball those kind of bowlers on that pitch. There's no way in hell.
I think they've ordered batting tracks. But I think Australia have got some good batters. I mean, just going down the Australia, I mean, I can't see there's going to be any difference in Australia's teams in the batting side of things as played against India, with Khawaja and Warner opening the batting, Labuschagne at 3, Smith at 4, Travis Head at 5, fresh from that fantastic innings. Cameron Green will be at number 6 as their all-rounder. Alex Carey, you mentioned there, as the wicketkeeper bat. And then you've got the bowlers to come with some of them can bat as well. So there's plenty of batting in that Australian lineup. So if England do roll out some really tasty batting tracks that are good for England to, in inverted commas, tee off from, they're going to be good for Australia to bat on as well. It's going to make it very hard for the likes of Jimmy and Stuart Broad, etc. And
we have to remember, baseball only works as when they're batting. It doesn't help them when they're bowling, James.
Oh, and now I disagree with that a little bit. Ben Stokes is a very attacking captain.
Oh, with his fields, absolutely. And I agree with that. But it's not like they can bowl 6 short balls in an over, because obviously the laws of the game won't let you do that. But they can't be that aggressive compared to their batting, where they can play, as you said, defensive shots aggressively or in a positive mindset.
I think
Australia's game plan will be based on bowling and batting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, England will think about the bowling.
Yeah,
They're not just going to walk out there and just kind of throw it together. They'll have long team
of
talks about the
course.
bowling as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah,
But the English people are able to think, Lucas.
yeah,
But I think the England frustration for me sometimes is that I mean, it happened under Root and it's happened under Stokes as well. Is England have a plan A, and if that works, then fantastic. If it
yeah,
doesn't work, you end up having those 6 or 7 overs, and sometimes longer than that, where suddenly somebody's tasked with being the enforcer coming into bowl short. And sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. But when it doesn't work, it can look very, very messy. And Australian batters are pretty good at playing the short ball, so that could be an interesting dynamic as well. If Australia do say it is a corking batting track at Edgbaston, and Australia win the toss and bat first, and England get a little bit behind the 8 ball in terms of Australia getting away from them, short bowling and stuff against the Australians with a blue sky and stuff might not be the cleverest of tactics.
yeah. Well, that's we can go into individual players here, but that's why I think Mark Wood will be extremely effective on those. If they're going to make pitches like that, Mark Wood has to play all 5 tests. Now look what he did in the Ashes.
Mark Wood won't play all 5 test matches.
Yeah, obviously because of health injury, he hasn't bowled much. But Mark Wood was their best bowler in Australia by a mile, James. Wasn't even close because the pitches were hard. It suited his bowling. He bowls a heavy ball, if you know what I mean.
It's not just heavy; it's very fast.
Yeah, as well. He had the pace to penetrate the pitches. So if England are going to go down that route, they're going to need bowlers. Now, there's no Jofra Archer, there's no Ollie Stone. They're going to need bowlers that are going to penetrate those pitches, James, because now I know Nathan Lyon, Ollie Robinson, Ben Stokes, Mitchell Stark have said, we can beat them 5-0. But genuinely, Australia do think they can win 5-0. But I believe that as well. I believe that if there was ever going to be a series we'd win 5-0 in England, it'd be this match because of the baseball technique. Because if it all goes wrong, they're still going to go with it.
There is as much chance of you winning 5-0 as England winning 5-0.
Well, I disagree with that, James. I don't think we're going to win 5-0.
You're wrong then.
Yeah,
you're wrong.
I don't think we'll win 5-0, but I think this is the best series we can win 5-0.
You just said you will.
Oh well, then we will then. But what what I'm really fearful, James, is if we make dead pitches like we see in Pakistan, I'm worried that we could see draws here, and that's not what this series needs. If this ends in like a 1-1 draw, which is possible, James, very possible.
There won't be dead pitches.
Yeah. Well, I hope not.
There'll be batting. Yeah. There'll be batting tracks. There'll be some life in them.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest. I mean, I know there's some bookmakers are offering no draws in the series at half decent prices, specials, and things like that.
No.
I think there might be. I mean, I just mentioned the weather's absolutely cracking at the moment. As soon as I get off the phone, so you're off out for a walk. But I think that the probably the more likely route to a draw, unless the weather breaks up, which you could do, it's England. But is for it to be an awesome batting track for Australia to kind of score 550 or something across 2 days, then England to score 550 across 1.5 days. And then the teams bat it out, and for just basically the 5 days not to be long enough. I mean, the way Ben Stokes has tackled Test matches as a captain, and it's funny actually. I saw a quote from Joe Root the other day who said he's captaining far better than I ever did. But I think their tactics kind of take the draw out of the equation. There was one of the games in Pakistan, I think it was any other team playing that game would have drawn it. Teams would have just batted out. It had been a boring draw. But what baseball brought to that was England came out, scored runs at a ridiculous rate, and managed to have enough time to win the match. But they've taken the draw. They tend to be taking the draw out of the equation. But this is why I think it would make sense for Australia to play maybe slightly more conservatively than they usually do. I'm not saying don't play aggressive cricket, and certainly some of the players in that side probably wouldn't be able to play less aggressive cricket.
Yeah.
But I think if they try and match England Bazball wise, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
But taking time out of the game and frustrating England actually dilutes Bazball, because the whole point of Bazball and Ben Stokes and how he looks at it is that he wants to try and take the draw out of the equation, win within 4 days, move on to the next test. They don't mind if they lose. They've said that a lot, live by the sword, die by the sword stuff. If these tactics are going to be entertaining, we're here to entertain. That might lead us to lose a few times. But I think the best way for Australia to play this series is to blunt England by batting long. And I don't necessarily mean bat massive, but bat long in terms of time. Because the longer you take out the game, if you can bat for 2 days and then England have only got 3 days left to win the game, then if England can't quite score as quickly against Cummins and co as they have been doing against some of these other countries, then the draw starts to come into the equation. And Stokes may be forced to take a few more risks to try and energise Bazball and to win. And that's where Australia might be able to capitalise, I think.
I do hope there is life, because I don't want to see 3 draws or whatnot. That wouldn't do this series a world of good. Wouldn't do Test cricket a world of good. I agree that people are saying that this is the most anticipated series Test Ashes in history. I agree with that, because England are almost like the new kids on the block with the way they're playing with this Bazball style. As far as tactics go, it's unheard of.
Yeah,
white ball tactics, but not in Test match cricket. And then you're playing against the might of Australia, who are naturally aggressive. So I agree with that. It is one of the most anticipated series in Ashes history.
I've not looked forward to an Ashes series as much as this for. I can't remember the last time I looked forward to an Ashes test as much as this. It's because I kind of do quite a lot of work in commentary in cricket. I do a lot of work in commentary, see a lot of cricket, and it sounds like I'm getting bored of it. I'm not at all. But kind of series kind of follow each other quite quickly. There's a lot of cricket played in the calendar, so you can never get too much anticipation, because there's always seems to be cricket somewhere. So your appetite is never denied you for a while, is it? You're never denied food in terms of cricket for a while, so you're never that hungry for it, because there's always cricket being played. Whereas I'm really hungry for this Ashes series. I can't wait for it to start. It's going to be brilliant. As I said, there's so many things I don't quite. I'm not quite sure how they're going to happen, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how they're going to happen.
Just get out the fast forward button and fast forward 4 days, James. That would be absolutely fantastic. We'll start wrapping up this show. Actually,
that's the definition of Bazball, fast forwarding through the game.
Yeah. Glad you can use that. I was going to say we'll start wrapping this up. Before we do, the first test, who do you expect to play with the bowlers? Is it Anderson and Broad? Will they play?
I guess a lot of it will be how well Anderson and Robinson are. Because obviously they missed the Irish test.
Robinson, sorry.
Missed the Ireland test match because of niggly injuries, as I understand it. I've seen Anderson bowling, and he looked okay. Seen Ben Stokes bowling, and he looked okay as well, because that's going to be quite key to England, I think, how many overs Ben Stokes can bowl, because he obviously provides quite a bit of balance to that side when he can bowl, even if it's just sort of 10 or 12 overs in the innings. It just gives the other bowlers a bit of a rest. And with Moeen Ali coming back into Test cricket, and maybe he might need a little bit of time to find his feet back on the Test stage. Ben Stokes bowling a few overs might be quite crucial. So that's going to be interesting. But I think, Stuart Broad, I saw an interview with him, because you remember last time he was left out of the first Test, and there was a massive hoo-ha, and he did an interview where he spat his dummy out, basically, had a bit of a tantrum.
I think that was incidentally the one innings where Warner made his 50 because Broad wasn't playing.
But I think I seem to recall at the time, I could just see what they were doing. I don't know if it was just a lack of communication from the selectors at the time, or whatever it was, or whether it was Stuart Broad just trying to divert attention or something. But they were always going to rotate the seam attack, because it was quite a condensed series then. And give the likes of Jimmy a test off here and there, and Stuart. I just think it just started off last time with Stuart Broad having one of his test matches off right at the start. and they'd worked out where they wanted key bowlers to play as the series went through. And Stuart Broad not playing in that first Test match meant he could play then in subsequent ones, and they changed the attack that way. They might well do it this time. So I think it'd be interesting to see if Chris Wokes plays at Edgbaston. It's his home ground. Warwickshire is his county. Ollie Robinson, I think, is now the real deal in Test cricket. He's certainly ready to take over. Fitness permitting, certainly ready to take over from Jimmy. Should Jimmy decide to step down at any stage in the near future, or in 2 or 3 years, whenever it is, because he's was he now 88 or 89, so that they're whether they need pace, quite the pace of Mark Wood or something at Edgbaston, possibly not. It might be that they give Mark Wood a little bit more time to get ready to play in the subsequent game. So, yeah, I mean, that doesn't really answer your question. I've just kind of run through the potential England bowlers and given you a little bit of an idea of what I think. But I don't know, because we don't quite know exactly how they are.
Yeah. A lot of debate with Australia's Test attack. One bowler's came under huge scrutiny is Mitchell Starc, who did not play the best Test in the World Cup final, if you want to call it that. Didn't bowl the best. Has never been really good in England, James. Statistically never been that good.
He was pretty good in the T20 Blast for Yorkshire that season. But anyway, carry on.
Oh, well, I was unaware he even played in that, James.
Yeah, David Miller and Mitchell Starc were the two overseas signings in 2012.
Oh, okay. So 2012. I thought you meant recently, James. I was gonna say. Well, as you know, Mitchell Starc doesn't play IPL no more because he said that he wants to, in a quote, save his Test career or extend it.
He's hardly ever played IPL. He's always been signed, but never played for some reason. He's always found a way out of it, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has, hasn't he? He plays white ball for Australia, but just doesn't want to play Big Bash or IPL.
I wonder if Mitch has got a very good insurance company that pays out on him not playing in the IPL, regardless of what his reason is. But anyway,
must be all those car adverts he does in Australia. Be like David Warner.
I need a big car because he's got very long legs.
Yeah. I think that's why he only drives SUVs, James.
Yeah.
A bit like David Warner with these LG TVs. But in all seriousness, no, Starc is an issue. But I think you need, as much he is an issue, you need him because he has the pace to penetrate pitches. Reverse swing, which is crucial. Yeah. We saw that in Pakistan. His reverse swing in Pakistan was crucial.
Left arm as well, isn't he? So it kind of just gives you an extra string to your attack, doesn't it? And I think with Mitchell Starc as well, you maybe get a dodgy spell from him every now and again, but when he gets it right, then he can get it very right. He can take you 3 or 4 very quick wickets if he just kind of clicks. So that it's worth maybe having a spell where these 6 overs go for sort of 35 or something, because he comes back for the second one, he might suddenly take 3 for 12 and open up the innings.
He's a type of bowler I think England will target. I'm not sure if you've seen much of Scott Boland. You obviously watch this Test.
Sorry, I've seen quite a bit of him actually, because I watched him when he had that stellar debut. Watched him in the
sorry, I forgot about that, James.
And he's the sort of bowler that looks tailor-made for England. Yeah,
and there was perception around him that he's a dibbly-dobbler bowler. He only bowls 80 miles per hour. It's not the case, James. He was bowling 140, 142, 140, 142 kilometers or 85 miles per hour. In the World Test Championship, he's more than that, James. And I don't see England targeting him. It's more like if you miss, well, I hit. He's that kind of bowler. He's absolutely dead. Statistically, he's more accurate than Hazelwood. Way more accurate.
I think he's very good, and I think I think we'll see
Yeah.
because Hazelwood's not quite fit yet, is he? So
No, he
he's not
won't
the
play the first test.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so Boland's bound to start,
yeah,
and Edgbaston might suit Scott Boland as well.
yeah,
And he could make it very difficult because I mean, if Hazelwood's
yeah,
fit for the second test and Scott Boland's had a great game at
yeah,
at Edgbaston, it might make it tough.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I think both sides.
yeah.
I don't think we'll see too many changes in the batting ranks as we go through.
No, no.
Partly because there's not too much time for anybody to really do anything to either show what they can do from the
No.
county scene, but also, to kind of change. It's going to be so thick and fast. They'll just probably stick to the same batting unless somebody just has like 6 consecutive ducks, and they might look to change him, but that's very unlikely. Excuse me, but I think the bowlers, both attacks in the bowling departments, will change.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that statement. I don't see any. Maybe if Warner has a couple of bad tests, but even then, I don't think they'll change. Well, they didn't change it in the 2009 Ashes. Why would they change it now?
If there was an issue with David Warner or another, is it Marcus Harris that would be in the squad that would come in for him?
Yeah. Well, they have 2 options. They have Renshaw, who doesn't open anymore for his state. He bats at 5 or 6, and they've got, of course, Marcus Harris. Yeah. So there's not. I don't think they'll do that. And knowing that David Warner will retire at the end of the SCG test against Pakistan later this year or early next year, sorry, I think they'll just let him go.
David Warner's a funny one, isn't he? Because he's a little bit of a pantomime villain, I think, in England. Obviously, Sandpaper Gate, you get a lot of English fans calling Smith and Warner cheats and what have you, and whatever. But I think he's ultimately going to be. When you watch the TV and Ricky Ponting comes on now, and a lot of England's English fans really like listening to Ponting and like seeing him on the TV coverage, and you almost have to pinch yourself because you kind of trained a little bit as English people. I'm sure it's the same for Australia against English England players. You train to almost kind of trying to dislike them because you kind of certain things they do annoy you. And when you saw Ponting run out at Trent Bridge in 2005, and he's ranting up and "Shut up, you Aussie," and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, but you actually realise when you actually get to meet them in the flesh. I met Ricky Ponting. Obviously worked with Jason Gillespie. There's been a few Australians I've had the genuine pleasure of meeting, and they're actually really nice guys. And the same is true, I would imagine, of in reverse. But obviously for the next 5 or 6 weeks, you're Australians and you're going to get beaten. Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing with Stuart Broad. Public enemy always been number 1. The walk and unwalk decision, stirring up the crowd.
I still don't know why he did that because it's so. Anyway.
They're just I think Bumble's commentary summed that up pretty perfectly that day.
I was going to say though, at the end of the Warner stuff, I lost my train of thought for a second. I'm actually going to really miss him when he's actually hung his boots up and he's not going to be playing Test cricket anymore because he just provides that extra dimension, that little kind of bit of pantomime when he walks in, gets booed. He will do again this summer. But I've seen a few more interviews with him recently, and he's actually comes across as quite a decent bloke, I think, actually. And I think he's going to be another one of those that. Maybe in 10 years' time, 5 years' time, whatever, the English public will probably say, "Oh, he's actually quite a nice bloke, this David Warner."
He still gets stick from the media. There's a perception in Australia that he owes the Australian public something. He owes the Australian public nothing, absolutely nothing. Neither does Steve Smith.
I mean, he does, because what they did was wrong. But they served their time.
Paid for that. They've paid for that.
They served their time, and they served longer time than probably they arguably should have done as well.
Yeah.
But what does in terms of the way the Aussies look at it, are David Warner and Steve Smith treated the same way? Do they get level amounts of hostility and defence, or is Warner singled out?
No. When it comes to those two, there's a bit more love for Steve Smith.
Yeah. Why is that?
And I think that's got to do a little bit with his batting, with his ability.
I mean, I suppose Warner was a little bit more hands-on with the decision making and the putting it into practice that day. But I think they both. I mean, what happened, Lucas, in my mind, was that Australia got a little bit too big for their boots and a little bit too sledgy and a little bit too arrogant when it came to how they were playing their cricket at the time. I think there was a lot of teams, including England, who were doing stuff to cricket balls. But when Australia when Australia got caught out doing it, I think the world thought you've got your comeuppance there because you've been a bit dickish for the last few years.
I'll address it because I know this is going on your podcast. So I hope you keep this on your podcast. I've always said this.
I'll be the judge of that.
Okay. Leading up to that test match and to that series, as you know, they bet England 4-0 in the Ashes. Every man in their dog was saying, right, you've bet England. When are you going to start doing it away from home? Now, remember in that series in South Africa, they won the first test. Everybody was going, yeah, they're finally doing it on the way, because for a long time, James, they got bet up by Bangladesh, for crying out loud. They lost that. They drew that series 1-1. Now I understand England's also lost to Bangladesh, but that pissed off a lot of people. The day they lost to Bangladesh, then they got rolled in India, then they got rolled in Sri Lanka. They won in England. No one, obviously, we cared, but the third test match, when Australia won that third test match, Steve Smith was getting questions about an away series, and Steve Smith was saying, well, hang on, let's just finish the Ashes. So there was a lot of pressure. They won that first test in South Africa. They lost the second test in South Africa quite convincingly. The third test, we all know what happened there. So I think the pressure got to them. I'm not excusing what they did, but I think David Warner and Steve Smith did a terrible thing while trying to do the right thing. They loved their country that much. They were willing to do anything to win. And unfortunately, they crossed a massive line. Ooh. My God, did they pay the price?
Ooh.
But
I was with you until you just said that.
Yeah. We don't condone what they did, but they loved their country that much. They were willing to do anything. And the pressure of winning an away series, and at that time, in South Africa were dynamite. They were brilliant. Phil Lander, Morka, AB de Villiers, Morkel. And the wheels completely fell off after that second test. We know what they did in the third test, fourth test, irrelevant, because they went home. But I think the pressure got to them way too much, and they were willing to do anything to win that series and shut up critics, media journalists, and then we all know what happened. It just went tips up. So that's my perception. I've always stuck with that. I always believe in that. Now, whether who else was involved, I don't have an opinion on that. My opinion on that has been, I don't have an opinion on that, but I think more players do know. I won't get into that.
I think, of course they do. Of course they do.
Yeah,
I agree and admire 99% of what you just said, but I think they love your country stuff, so therefore we'll cheat. I mean, I know you said you don't condone that, but there's just no excuse for that. You've got to love cricket as well, and you betray it. But every time you cheat, you betray cricket, and
of course,
therefore you got your comeuppance. But for people who are anybody watching this that's going to the Ashes that's thinking, I'm going to go out and buy some sandpaper, I'm going to boo David Warner. Surely we've got to the end of that now, haven't we? I mean, how long ago was that? It's just they've done their time. Come on, let's get on with cricket. Let's enjoy the Ashes series without all of the booing. We don't need to boo the opposition.
I agree. So if anyone's listening to this or watching this, that's the only time I'll ever address what happened in South Africa. So good luck with that. James, we'll wrap this show up. Predictions. Who's going to win the first test?
I made my predictions the other day, but I've got the World Test Championship wrong, so my summer's already in disarray when it comes to my predictions.
You did. You picked India, didn't you?
Yeah. But then Lucas, you see, you're laughing, but I picked Australia to beat England 3-1. So if I got that wrong, England 3-1. That's the prediction.
I think they will win. Of course, they'll win this test match. Of course, I can't say no to that. My bias within me can never agree to that. But I think they'll win the series 4-1. I think it'll be very easily. But we will get 4-1. Australia.
Okay.
I think one.
Well,
I think if Bazball fails,
I'm going 3-1 England. We're going to go 4-1 Australia.
Okay. Well, we will get you back after the first test, James, but we'll wrap up the show. But it was a pleasure to review the World Test Championship and the Ashes and talk about the racism stuff at Yorkshire. So we do appreciate that. So thank you, James, on the Cricket Badger podcast. Listen to that weekly shows from James Butler, and you can add him on Twitter at the Cricket Badger and Lucas R32 Sky. James, thank you for doing this long review with me.
Always a pleasure. This on the Cricket Badger podcast, this might have to come out in 2 parts. I think we're gassed on for hours.
It's what the Ashes does to us, James. I swear. If this was any other series, it would be over in half an hour.
But did you realise when we started this Ashes preview, it was a preview. Now it's a review because it's been played since we've been talking. It's taken us 7 weeks.
Well, the time we'll get it out, the series will be over, and you'll be on the way to India. No, but thank you, James. Appreciate that, and we will see you at the end of the first Test match. And let's hope, for Australia's sake, I will be laughing, because I will be. I do not want to have a reaction like this. And in the world of depression, James,
this will only work for people watching this, but this will be Lucas. This will be Lucas.
Yeah. Now, that actually might be right, and that'd be embarrassing. So Australia, do not do that to me, because I actually believe that we will win this series very well. And I actually want to see Australia win a series in England for the first time in 25 years. Please.
Oh, Lucas, you've really set yourself up here, haven't you? You've really set yourself up.
Yeah, I can't wait till some idiot down the line screenshots this and posts it on bloody Twitter. But anyway, James, thank you for watching, and we will see you next week at the end of the first test.
Cheers, Lucas. Cheers, everybody.